during domestic work or at social gatherings. And this is the way they would be transmitted from generation to generation. Really incredible, over 500 years in exile from Spain. I mean, if you're in Spain, you can understand that these things would be passed on because they're okay, but in exile. And that's really the most amazing thing. Here you see on the slides what are called pliegos sueltos. These are called broadsheets that would be sold in marketplaces. And you can see that when the printing press came in the late 15th century, toward the end of the 15th century, they started to print these things and sell them in marketplaces. And rich collectors from around Europe would come and buy them up. You know, they were collectibles. And they would put them in books, and they would be in, now you can find them in national libraries and in private collections. And these old printings are some of the ways that we have to actually compare the texts in oral tradition to what they were back in the 15th century. So they're quite amazing. So now let's turn briefly to some of the characteristics or features of the Judeo-Spanish and the Seattle romancero. Just as Ladino preserves Spanish of the 15th century, the Judeo-Spanish ballad tradition preserves very archaic romansas. We know this from comparing the old printed text to contemporary 20th century versions in oral tradition. And oftentimes when traditions are taken into diaspora, into places that are far away from the initial cultural context in which they're born, they tend to become very fixed and solidified. And that is one of the reasons why the Sephardic romancero has been able to maintain, because that they were singing the same songs over and over again within their own communities. And so add to this fact that once they came to Seattle, at the beginning of the 20th century, Seattle has been a very stable community and kind of far away from other Sephardic communities. So again, the context of preserving and passing on these ballads and that they would remain in people's memories. So it isn't surprising that the repertoire of the Seattle community preserved very archaic versions. A beautiful example of this is Mrs. Barbara Coronel, or Cornell as her name was Americanized, singing about the assassination of the Duke of Gandia. Now, the Duke of Gandia was a Spanish duke from the house of Borja, from the area of Borja. And the father of this particular Giovanni Borja became Pope Alexander VI. Okay, popes had children in those days. And this is a story. Now, Giovanni was also the brother of Caesar Borgia and Lucretia Borgia, and you may have heard those names. So, on the night of June 14th, 1497, Giovanni is murdered and thrown into the Tiber River in Rome. A search party is sent out, and they find his body in the river with his throat slit, 9 stab wounds, and still holding a purse of 30 gold ducats. So clearly it was not an assassination for money. Rumor was that his brother Caesar had ordered the assassination, but historically we don't know what really was. Mrs. Coronel's version of this song retains many of the historical details after 5 centuries in oral transmission. She will sing, it includes the horsemen, the river, the body, the stab wounds, and the gold ducats. And we won't hear the entire song because it takes 5 minutes to hear the whole thing. But there's a translation here for you to see as you hear her sing.
Nazari, vai Nazari, Ida, la ciudad de Visirolo. Ahí había un pescador, oro, buscando su proveería. Vido venir tres en caballo, que es la voz que tengo ahora, haciendo gran polvo y cercaron cerca del río, a la mar lo echaría. Hecho ganchos y gancheras, por ver lo que les salía, les salió bulten de oro, y yo le parecía.
So there you have the way in which that song is particularly unique because not many, it's a song that is not transmitted in the Spanish oral tradition. It is only transmitted among the Sephardic Jews. So it's very interesting.